Welcome back to our discussion of the Play framework using Scala. We've gotten to the point where we have basically a fully functional to-do list. It allows us to log in, we can create users. The basic functionality, everything we were aiming for is there. But it has a few shortcomings. Okay? One of which is the fact that our model exists completely in memory. So if I were to, every time this gets restarted, basically any users that I've created go away and we don't have access to them. That's a problem. We really want this to be backed by a database that's not in memory so that it's persisted across runs. And that's something that we will wind up adding to this. The other problem is that it's very 1.0, Web 1.0, in that everything is a complete page refresh. So when I log in, it goes to a new page. When I submit a task, it reloads the page. When I delete a task, it reloads the page. Okay? Everything is a page reload. That was the model for Web 1.0. Web 2.0 doesn't do page refreshes for everything. By the way, you might note that this page now looks different than what it had before. I had a question from one of the viewers asking about the fact that these pages that I'm making don't look very good. That has nothing to do with Play. That has to do with me and this video series. I have put no CSS on these things. I haven't tried to make them look nice. I did decide to add Bootstrap into our main, and just adding Bootstrap changed the appearance a reasonable amount. I also added jQuery because that's what we're going to talk about. So we have these two changes, one of which is to add a database, one of which is to make things more like a Web 2.0 application. And I could choose to do either one I wanted right now. I'm going to go with the Web 2.0 first. We're going to do both of them. We will talk about slick database bindings. But first, I want to talk about Ajax. So Ajax stands for, or used to stand for, when it was first created, it stood for asynchronous JavaScript, asynchronous XML and JavaScript. And what that implied was that your website could send a request to the server and get data back and then update itself without doing a full page refresh. And the X in there, the XML, is because originally this was done with XML computation. In fact, the original way to do this was this call that's part of JavaScript. It's called XML HTTP request. And you would fire off a request to the server. It would come in as a GET or a POST, just like what the web browser sends normally. But instead of being something that redoes the page, it would just give back the data, and that data would be acted upon in a programmatic type of way. At this point, there's really not much reason to use an XML HTTP request, and this is kind of the old school way of doing things. It's been superseded kind of twice now, once as an external library and once as a standard. If you start searching for Ajax, odds are the first things you're going to find are in the jQuery library. And part of that is because jQuery has a whole section of Ajax, and they have a function called just Ajax. For this video, I think I'm going to go with the Ajax stuff, but I will also show you that there is an alternate way of doing this. The standard for JavaScript with the introduction of HTML5 and the newer standards includes a command called fetch. And fetch is an alternate way of doing these Ajax calls so that you can get information from the server and then act upon it as you will. Okay, that's a lot of talking. Let's see what I actually mean by this. So what I want to do is I want to go back to our original application here. We have this little website that was being pulled up, and what I want is to have a little text in here. Click for a new random number. And we'll start with 4 because that's, a pretty random number, right? So I'm going to make not a scan, a span that has an ID of, we'll just call it random, and actually the 4 is going to go inside of our span. And you might recall that this page is the one that comes up not from the login, but from the root. Okay, so what I added is this little paragraph here, and the goal is that if I click on this paragraph, it will wind up updating that number. Okay, sounds like a plan. The thing is, I don't want to do it in a web 1.0 way. I don't want the whole page to refresh. I want it to just update this little piece of text. And as I said, in this video, I'm going to do that through jQuery, but maybe I'll come back in the next video and show doing the same thing using fetch and standard JavaScript calls. I'm going to go ahead and also attach an ID to this. We'll call this the random text. Okay. And I need this page to invoke some JavaScript code. I created a little folder down here called JavaScript. I'm going to make inside of it, and you couldn't see that, I went to Other. Under JavaScript, I'm just going to make a JavaScript source file, and I'm going to basic stuff.js. Okay, we'll just put whatever random stuff makes sense for us inside of that file right there. Remember, by putting it inside of public, we have access to it through the assets route inside of here, much like the main uses assets, and in this case they use the versioned assets. We'll do the same to pull down things from style sheets, this file, and to pull down the image of the fave icon, which is actually the little play icon. We're going to use the same type of thing to pull down this. I'm going to do it, so we can go ahead and copy two little elements here. I want to put them at the bottom of my content. We could put them at the top and have it so that they were set to execute at after the load is complete. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and put this in right here. And instead of being style sheets main.cs, is going to be JavaScript / basic stuff.js. Okay, I've written some stuff. It would be good to verify that it actually works. How about we just come into here and do a console.log of running JS. Verify to ourselves that that's actually happening. So we go back to our app, we refresh it. Hey, I didn't do anything to break it. I hit Control-Shift-I, and I look at the console, and there's a printout saying running JS. Wonderful. Okay, so this appears to be working. I'll leave that console up. It's actually, I find it very handy to have the JavaScript console around. So what I want to do is I want to attach a click handler to this that when it is called will update the number. But okay, and I guess we could do, let's just make sure we can do that first. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to do this the jQuery way. So I am going to get that item, which was, I called that random text, and I'm going to give it a click handler. And while I like to use the Lambda syntax, turns out using Lambda syntax with jQuery can do some things that you don't like for reasons that I'm not going to go into in this video. So I'm going to use the function syntax instead. Right now I'm not going to take any arguments on this. We could do so if we needed to in a bit, but just to show that we can do this, I am going to change the text on that span. So random dot, let's see, I think if I just pass HTML We'll say not a number for that. Okay, so theoretically, if I've written this correctly, when we click on the text, the random span, its HTML will be reset to that. F5, click, hey, that appears to work. Okay, but my goal is to have a random number, but I don't want it to be a random number that's generated by the by JavaScript. Obviously, we could do that, and for random number, that would be fine. But when you're using Ajax, it's because there's information on the server that you want. Okay, so let's see if we can get that in here real quick. So as I said, I'm going to use jQuery for this. And the easiest way to use jQuery for getting these types of things is to use their load method. Okay, let's go look in here and let's scroll down to load. So there's a get and a post which do get requests and load and post requests. Turns out all of these wind up calling the Ajax method. It does everything. So what load does is you just pass it a URL, and notice you're calling this, the jQuery notation here, you're calling this on an element. So I'm calling it on the random span, and I'm supposed to give it a URL. So how about we just say random, and whatever this returns is going to be put into there. Now, of course, right now, if I were to do this, this should nicely fail for me. So there we have a 4. Oh, and it can't call random. Well, of course not. Our web server doesn't give anything back for random. If we want that to happen, we need to add a path. So let's just real quickly say we're going to make a random number. This is an action. We don't need the request for this. And I want to give back an OK of a util.random.next int. Let's do randoms up to 100 .toString. Okay, so this is going to give us back the string of a random number between 0 and 99. If we add a route for this, and we're going to call this route random, because that's the one that I put in, controllers.application.randomNumber is called there. Let's go back to our app. So now when I click this, it should send a request to the server, that to the random, that should generate a random number and send it back. Now the thing to note here is that as I'm clicking this, that little icon that shows you whether or not you're loading a page or whatnot isn't indicating that we loaded a page. If I hit F5, you can see it goes to an X for a little bit because it's doing a page refresh, but this is not. Okay, this is now an Ajax call. So that's kind of the cornerstone of Ajax. We'll show you how to do this without using jQuery in the next video, and then we'll talk about how we want to redo our task list so that version 2 doesn't do full page refreshes. Instead, it is a Web 2.0 based task list that does things through Ajax calls.